So I just was notified over the weekend that I was mentioned by name in the Tyler Robinson court hearings. There was a tweet that someone put out, said, Tyler Robinson's attorneys are big mad. Not only are they angry at every government official that made statements about their client and every news agency and reporter that reported on his arrest, they are mad at influencers and ex-posts. Folks that got honorable mention in the court filings are as follows: certain individuals such as Elon Musk or Sean Davis, Andrew Tate, Kristen Hawkins, Brian Eastwood, Matt Forney, Patrick Casey, and Joel Webbin. Now, not only was I mentioned in Tyler Robinson's court hearings, but an article just surfaced from The New Yorker. That was just yesterday or this morning, I believe. And then over the past week, I was also mentioned by name in the New York Times, the LA Times, and Daily Mail. In short, Aslan is on the move. God is doing something. The new Christian right is ascendant. There are multiple issues at hand, from Christians wielding political power. Power not being seen as a vice nor as a virtue, but as a tool that needs to be wielded righteously. Feminism dying, several deaths, and patriarchy being on the rise. Our appearance at CPAC and our reporting on the political shift that is taking place among conservatives who are younger, below the age of 45. All these things have been making headline news, and we have been at the forefront of this movement, America First, Christian nationalism, the new Christian right, and we're going to be breaking it down, reading from some of these articles from the New York Times, the LA Times, Daily Mail, the New Yorker, Tyler Robinson's court hearings, all these things, breaking it down. What does it mean? Where are we going? What's being accomplished? And what can we expect in the very near future? That's going to be our episode for today. Tune in now.
Radical Christian nationalist pastor, Joel Webbin.
Joel Webbin? I'm going to talk about Joel Webbin today.
Joel Webbin has been excellent.
All right, here we are.
All right, so let's jump in. So we've got a stack of articles here just recently published, at least within the last couple of weeks.
Recently published off our printer. I mean, there's a whole forest that they're done right now for all this printing.
Yep, it's a shame. But we're going to read through some of these. We just want to give the lay of the land in terms of the different things. I think Israel's been a big one. CPAC, we were at, I think, was that last week? I feel like time flies.
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago or so. So we were there at CPAC, and we'll jump right into this one. So this is an article. Now, there was obviously reporters. We saw a few ourselves as we were walking around. I think we saw one from the Associated Press. This is from the New York Times. This article is titled, "I Think That MAGA is Dying, Inside the Youth Movement at CPAC." This is an article I think it's really interesting because it certainly resonated with us as we were there. We were talking with people. We were at CPAC Central. We were going to the main the dichotomy of the main sessions at CPAC is you see all of these Republicans who are prominent and in the Trump administration, they're coming and speaking, and then you're on the floor of CPAC Central, and you're like, oh, the young people are. It's like the total opposite. And this article helps shine light on this. So I'll jump right in here, start reading. So it says, it starts. As the first day of the Conservative Political Action Conference wound to a close, the audience inside the airplane hangar-sized ballroom had dwindled as Nick Shirley, the headline speaker, mumbled his remarks. Mr. Shirley, a 23-year-old content creator and recently minted right-wing celebrity, had been tapped by the conference's organizers to bring a youthful jolt of energy to the proceedings. But the youths themselves and their conservative energy were nowhere to be seen among the rows of empty chairs. So true. As Mr. Shirley made halting references to Theodore Roosevelt's "A Man in the Arena" speech, just outside the hall, 20-somethings in rumpled suits were gathered in clusters, debating the merits of a ground invasion in Iran, the conservative backlash against those who were quote-unquote J-pilled, far-right slang for skepticism of Israeli influence, the back-breaking costs of American life, and what they saw as the slow demise of the Trump era. Keep going here. The majority of us, this is a quote now from a Georgia teen Republican, the majority of us, we don't necessarily come to these types of events for the speakers because they generally dish out the same slop over and over, said Jack Moore, 19, a board member of the Georgia Teen Republicans. I'll jump a little bit further here to this part here. Some of the far right saw in the generational division an opportunity to claim a young cohort for an outlet. Joel Webbin, an online influencer who promotes a brand of nationalism infused with Christianity, wrote that the attendance at CPAC last week revealed one major finding: the youth are ours. Elijah Schaefer, a far-right commentator who could be seen as roaming the halls on CPAC on Friday in an all-black suit, wrote on X that CPAC 2026 has given me hope for the American youth. Every young man and woman here are all radicalized, based. Among the young Republicans, there were cases of people expressing forms of cautious optimism about the coming midterm elections and tentative support for the president's abrupt choice to attack Iran. But these views were expressed, for the most part, by attendees with professional aspirations to work in GOP circles. I'll finish it up here. The yawning alienation shared by CPAC's young conservatives extended to those with more moderate taste as well. However, like their more extreme peers, these traditional conservatives expressed an exhaustion with MAGA's culture war provocations. We've been saying this for some time on the channel. Mr. Trump's penchant for chaos and the new class of content creators like Mr. Shirley, whom they saw as an offering a shallower mode of conservatism.
We mentioned it on X, but there was a clear generational divide, and there's some people like, I don't even know if people knew who they were. A lot of young men, some even young women, came up to Joel, many of them. Hey, thanks so much for what you do. And we're not just talking about like 2 or 3, and we're not also just talking about, hey, I'm an intern at my local radio station. I'm not going to give them away. I'm not going to blow their cover. Influential people that are staffers, people that are members of political campaigns, political candidates themselves, guys that work in media, the whole gamut. And if you're under 40, they were coming up and they're saying, hey, you're doing great stuff. You're doing great work. We really appreciate the things that you're saying. And that generation older guys is the future.
Right, yeah. I mean, it was mostly those who are younger, under 40, but there were, multiple guys in their 50s who came up and had the same sentiment. One of the things that absolutely disgusted me about CPAC is that there were, you guys, tell me if I'm lying. I would say that there were at least 2 to 3 times as many Iranian flags as American flags at this conference.
Yeah.
And trying to figure that out, what's going on here. I talked to some of the guys who were flying these flags. They were Iranian, shocker. And there was just all these Iranians that were at CPAC, and they were flying their flags, and they were lobbying and trying to talk to people and push people. And I asked them, so what's up? Are you guys, protesting CPAC? Are you against, the message of this particular conference? No, we're in full support. And I asked them very specific questions. I said, so do you like what Trump is doing and bombing Iran and destroying, the equivalent of if Iran bombed the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. That's what we've done. Also a school, there were, 200 something children bombed and just incinerated in a moment. There's been multiple thousands of casualties that are civilians at this point in Iran are doing. Israel has done some of it, but we, on the behest of Israel, have been doing a lot of it. And so I was asking them, are you in support of President Trump and his decision to go to war with Iran and all these things? And oh yes, we love it. And I remember asking, well, what do you think about Benjamin Netanyahu? And they're like, oh, he's a hero. And I was trying to get to the bottom of it, what's going on with all these Iranians and their Iranian flags at a conference in Dallas, Texas, that's supposed to be pro-America. And they were there because they were pushing and lobbying for America to team up with Israel all the more and fight against the Islamic regime in Iran so that they could go back and have a free country. And here's the deal. I'm not sympathetic to Muslims, and I'm not sympathetic to any, Muslim regime that may or may not be tyrannical. But what I cannot stand for at all is, and I told one of the Iranians to his face, I said, you shouldn't be here. If this is how you feel, if this is not how you feel, you still shouldn't be here. What are you doing in America? But especially if you feel this way, you should be in Iran. You should be fighting. And it wasn't just the Iranians, but there were a lot of Jews. I remember seeing Steve Bannon. He was doing like a Q&A panel during one of the sessions, and there was, they were passing around the microphone, and one Jewish guy, he had to be the most Jewish man in the world, right? He had the kippah.
There's no caricature that we could do, voice.
No,
we
so
couldn't.
somebody else is
be
holding the
more
microphone
Jewish.
for him. There's certain points where he's putting his hands together and rubbing. He's like, in his voice. You couldn't make it up. I felt like this can't be real. But he's like, but we need to side with Israel and bomb Iran and the Muslims and at a certain point, I appreciated Steve Bannon saying this. I don't agree with everything with Steve Bannon, but I appreciated his courage at this point. He said, "Do you have a son?" This is an older Jewish man, who's like a full, like 4'11", overweight, wearing the kippah, rubbing his hands together, doing the merchant thing, saying, pushing for America to drop more bombs on Iran. And Steve Bannon rightly asked, he said, do you have grown children who are on the front lines, who are, deployed right now? Are they? And he's like, no. And of course he doesn't. He hasn't had zero skin in the game. He just wants us to fight his wars. And he's like, then you don't get a say.
Right.
Like what are you talking? So it's a bunch of Iranians flying Iranian flags at an American conference in Dallas, Texas, and then a bunch of Jews, teaming up with them. And these are Iranians who want their country's leaders to be overthrown because they want democracy in Iran. They want not even Christianity. None of them said, we want it to be robust and Christian. They want it to just be a neutral, politically, religiously neutral, 20th century secularism. That's right. What they want. They just want the westernizing of Iran so that they can go back and I don't even know if they would go back, but essentially that's the assumption that they would go back and experience, some of the blessings of, principled pluralism. And so you have the Iranians on one side and the Jews on the other, and, lock arms, full agreement, both pushing for America needs to put boots on the ground. We need to drop more bombs. We need to go all in and destroy Iran. And Bibi Netanyahu is a hero and a saint, and he's doing an excellent job, and this is great. But none of them was skin in the game. Like, as I was talking to all these individuals, whether it's the Jewish guy, who's getting questioned by Bannon, or it's this Iranian guy that I'm personally talking to after, none of them are willing to fight for themselves. So none of them are on the ground. None of them have family members or sons or daughters who are on the ground or even, enlisted in the military. But they're there at CPAC, one of the largest conservative Republican conferences in our country, in America, to lobby and push and pressure the Republican Party, the GOP, to keep fighting a war in Iran. The Jews want it to happen so that Israel can expand its hegemony and become a superpower. And the next thing and also Lebanon, and also Turkey, bomb them all. So the Jews are there to say, we got to do this, America, so that Israel can gain more power. And the Iranians are there, we got to do this, America, so that the Muslim regime in Iran would be dismantled so that secularism can win the day in Iran. And so both of them are there. None of them have skin in the game, and they're just pushing for America to drop bombs on a country when the whole MAGA thing, I thought, was no new wars. And then there's this bewilderment and shock, when guys like Nick Shirley get up as a desperate, sad attempt of CPAC to try to garner the youths. We got to get the youths in here. And nobody under the age of 45 cares, because they all feel betrayed. They're like, we can't pay for gas. We can't pay for groceries. We can't afford a house. We can't get married. We can't start a family. And you're enlisting us and sending us into the Middle East to die for Israel once again. And even if we come back home safely, all we're going to do is displace Muslims in the Middle East, and it's right-wing politics in America, heavily Jewish influence, right-wing politics in America, goes and fights wars in the Middle East that displaces Muslims. And then, mark my words, 2028, a Democrat, and all of a sudden the left now has power in America, and then Jewish influence on the left in America, pushes for looser immigration laws. There's all these refugees, Muslim refugees. How did that happen? Because we bombed them. We bombed them just a couple years before. So, this is American politics in a nutshell. You need to understand this. You have right-wing Jews and left-wing Jews, right? The GOP and the DNC. So you have war Jews and gay Jews. war Jews and homosexual Jews. When the war Jews are in charge, they fight Muslims because they're very, very, very dangerous, which displaces them. And then, all of a sudden, 4 years later, or maybe 8, then the left-wing Jews are in charge, and then they open up our borders and say, we need to have sympathy and compassion and let these refugees in. It's in tandem. It's in perfect concert. They may be at odds. It may not be conscious, the right and the left, and the way that they work together in American politics, all of it influenced by Jewish supremacy, but it works like hand in glove. It works in perfect concert. Right-wing war Jews, the GOP, displaces Muslims and fights wars. Left-wing gay Jews, the DNC, then takes them into America. And all the while, we're told by the GOP and at CPAC, we need to fight them there so we don't have to fight them here. Well, guess what? They already are here. How did that happen? How did they get here? Well, Jewish policies in America with loose, porous borders that allow for mass immigration from Islamic countries. So you have the GOP at CPAC partner. The whole thing is Zionist. The whole thing is Israel, Israel, Israel. And so the whole thing is like, we love the Jews. Also, we gotta partner with Israel in fighting Muslims over there so that we don't have to fight them here. They're only here because of Jews. Jews are the ones who open the door. Jews on the right bomb Muslims that displace them. Then Jews on the left open the door and welcome them here. Tale as old as time. This has been going on for 30 years now, 40 years now. And young people actually see it. They actually see it. And it's not because, just to be fair, it's not because Gen Z and, Gen Alpha it's like the first time we've had, a generation in America, with an IQ above 115. So I'm not saying that it's just because younger people are so smart. The reason why younger people can see it is because at the end of the day, you want to track, what's the correlation of anti-Semitism in the West rising and blah, blah. Here it is. It's really, really simple. Quality of life. Mm-hmm. That's what it honestly comes down to. Zionists have been in control for a very, very long time. But here's the deal. Jewish Zionist in control over America doesn't really bother a generation if they can feed their family, if they can go on vacation 2 weeks a year, if they can own their home and buy it for like $1.25, in the 80s, and and then just hold on to it
whole
for 60
week's
years,
wages.
right? And never sell it, and build a base on the moon and harvest, some kind of robot organs so that they can live for 300 years and never sell anything. Like the generation that's not feeling the pain in their daily lives. Right? Okay, well, there's inflation. Yeah, but the retirement is already settled. They've got all the Social Security benefits that won't be there for Gen Z, right? They have all the benefits. They got the health care. They got the Social Security. They got the 401k. They got the vacation time. They were able to get a job before we sold out American jobs for H-1B visas, and now they're being replaced by AI and all this. Like the boomers and a lot of Gen X got to live the American dream.
Yep.
So the reason why they don't struggle with anti-Semitism is not because, this is the first time that Jewish influence has been a problem in American politics. No, it's been a problem for decades. Mm-hmm. But in being a problem, it didn't trickle down to where it was felt by the average American, where it was felt at the grocery store, where it was felt at the gas pump. Remember back, in 2022, right, as inflation was ticking up because printer go burr, and where the Fed is printing money and all these kinds of things, and there was mass inflation on the hindsight of COVID and all these kinds of things. And all of a sudden, you start seeing it at the gas pump, and people were putting the stickers, and it was funny, putting the stickers of a picture of Joe Biden pointing at the gas pump prices, saying, "I did that." Now, I've been seeing some stickers. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but it's Benjamin Netanyahu saying, "I did that," as gas is going back up. And so my point is that young people, it's not that they're a standard deviation on IQ above, boomers or Gen X or something like that. And it's also not that Israel has only become a problem in the last 15 minutes. Now, Zionist politics in America has had a stranglehold on both parties for decades, but it's now being felt. And so the younger generation is saying, look, yeah, we're going to keep talking about this and keep talking about this and keep talking about this till the cows come home, because the normal things that would distract Americans from talking about the Jews would be things like a job, a home, a yard to mow, children, a wife. But Gen Z can't have any of that.
Right.
So Gen Z is going to talk about the Jews. And Gen Z is not going to be present at CPAC, or if they are, they're going to be in the lobby talking to me and ignoring Nick Shirley, who I think is a good guy and has done some good things, but who in that context was being propped up by a bunch of boomer Zionist GOP guys to try to get the use. And it's not going to work.
Yeah.
So that was CPAC.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the heart of it, I think, with the boomer Gen Z divide is like the boomers are those, I think, in the they're the robots in the matrix that actually benefit from the system that harvests the labor, harvests the productive output of younger generations. I think about like the great financial crisis. This is like the peak of like boomerism. Boomerism is like, it's right before the great financial crisis. You can buy a home. Like, I mean, anyone can get a home. You can get 2 homes on like an average salary. And the entire system comes crumbling down, obviously because of their licentiousness, because of their lack of prudence, I think, governmentally. And what happens? The government bails them out. Now, how do they bail them out? They take out a lot of debt. They take out a lot of debt. They keep the system propped up. Kick the can down the road for who? For Gen Z. For all of their, basically all of their income in the future is going to have to be taxed. It's going to have to be inflated away because of this massive ballooning debt. And Gen Z feels that more than ever. It's like, I don't even believe in the system. And this is that radicalization we're talking about that we sense at CPAC. It's like, I don't even, like, you're talking about 10-year-old tropes, like conservative tropes. And we saw all of it. We saw the gay, quote unquote, conservative who's there talking about how we win back arts and he's gay and he's got his, blonde hair dyed and he's got it shit. It's terrible. It's
the most
grotesque.
effeminate man you could possibly imagine.
You see all of these various coalitions there and you're just like, dude, the Trump coalition is cooked.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got multiculturalism. You've got like the cringe, performative conservatives who are going to go out there and,
the Trump base at this point, if CPAC is any indication of what Trump's base is made of, comprised of, it's made of Jews and Iranians.
Mm-hmm.
You know who it's not made of? Americans. It's not.
Yeah.
Like, it's literally the only heritage Americans that were present at that conference were gays, boomers, and women.
Yeah.
Gays, boomers, and women. You know who's not there? Straight white men. And certainly not straight white men under the age of 115. Right? That nowhere to be found. There was a few straight white men, but they're connected to oxygen tanks, and being wheeled in wheelchairs to their reserve seating at CPAC. That's it.
They're VIP booths. Yeah. Well, that leads right into this New Yorker article that just came out today. Everybody is talking about it, especially for this one portion. But Joel, you're mentioned in this, and the establishment is absolutely befuddled that young men are thinking this way. The title of this article just came out today from Antonio Hitchens, How the Internet Fringe Infiltrated Republican Politics. So we just described the current status quo of Republican politics. And now there's a bunch of shock that others have come in and said, hey, this doesn't actually stand for me. I'm going to read some extended excerpts from this article. Again, this is How the Internet Fringe Infiltrated Republican Politics. This is an interview the author has with an individual that they've just named G. G is a young 30-something Gen Z man, very much so online, very much connected, very much listening and saying the same types of things we're saying. Listen to G's interview. G detailed all of this to me, everything about the third world and the liberal elites and white replacement, or the Great Replacement. G detailed all this to me while drinking watermelon mocktails on the rooftop of a hotel near the beach. Quote, my ancestors came here on the Mayflower, he said. They bled and they died, committed genocides and fought wars. And what the blank was the point of all that? So we could get replaced by Indians and Chinese people who don't care about us? So we can get ruled by these insane leftists who care about nothing except getting generational revenge against whites? Or to be ruled by these psychopathic Zionist billionaires? I was used to hearing him speak in this register. Attempting a coherent portrait, this is specifically about groypers, that would be individuals that follow Nick Fuentes. Attempting a coherent portrait of groypers can feel a bit like trying to describe the plot of a surrealist film or a fantasy board game that takes place in its own universe. They greet each other with a salutation, Christ is King. They see their movement as a gathering storm about to break over American politics. Liberals may think of Trump as the era as a tragedy of democratic backsliding and authoritarian malignancy. Groypers view it as a cynical pantomime of nationalist takeover that never went far enough. Fuentes has become the gleeful narrator of this dashed dream, building a career in part by insisting that Trump's pledge to put America first has curdled into a lie. Nick said that Trump's going to simp for Israel. G told me he's totally going to cozy up to the donors. He's not going to give us mass deportations. He's not actually going to advance any of our interests except performatively to appease us. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. Moving on in this article, going down over here, I've got it here somewhere. For some, the goal is to shape the country's future by entering political institutions and changing them from within. As one of them put it, hide your true beliefs, gain power, gain influence, and when the time is right, take power. Now listen to this excerpt. This is being talked about all this morning. When I asked an administration official about Dreher's estimates, so this is going on a couple months ago, Rod Dreher estimated 30-40% of staffers in D.C. align with our messaging, specifically Nick Fuentes' messaging. 30 to 40% of young men in D.C.
Yeah.
They're hiding their power levels, they're being covert, but secretly, this is what they agree with. When I asked an administration official about Rod Dreher's estimate, 30-40%, he told me that in terms of staffers who would come off to most people as Groypers adjacent, very radical, very extreme Zoomers, it was actually close to 75%. They're an incidental outgrowth of an underlying sociological phenomenon, which is the rightward drift of the silent majority, he said. It's now developed into something further than the Trump movement. You could going on here. They've believed that for decades, America has prostrated itself to immigrants and foreign nations at the expense of its own languishing citizens. Israel and what Fuentes calls organized Jewry, we did an episode on this, world Jewry, are often to blame. The conservative movement has become nothing but, quote, a glove and a tool of the Israel lobby. G tells me they're building Israel as a superpower. Will they kill America? For those already convinced of the existence of this old cabal, G has insisted to me for months that Trump was controlled by Israel and that its closest advisors were tied to Mossad. Soon, the Times was reporting that Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had been determined to keep the American president on the path to war, and that the outcome was even better than he'd hoped. As Joel Webbin, a Christian nationalist podcaster and ally, put it on X, so we got wokeness out of our military just in time to ensure that it's exclusively the young, white Christian men of America who get to go die in the desert for Israel.
So true.
Nailed it.
So true, King. Let me mention that for just a moment. The military is going to be strong again. The military is going to be masculine again, right? We're going to get rid of, the trannies. We're going to get rid of this and get rid of that. We're going to actually have physical tests,
No women in combat even,
right?
maybe.
No women in combat. We're going to have physical, benchmarks, even for the generals, the leaders. If they can't bench a certain amount, or if they're fat and lazy and out of shape, they're going to be sent home. Pete Hegseth, is totally based. And we should have known, right? We should have known wokeness is leaving the military. We're probably going to war, right? This is what it all comes down to. You need to recognize this. Everybody, and I was drinking some of the Kool-Aid myself, to my shame, I have to admit it. But 2024, the election cycle, and the first few months of Donald Trump's second administration, all the executive orders, 1 billion executive orders, daily for 100 days straight, and everybody's posting, we're so back. This is what I've realized, is that at this point, unless God does a miracle, unless Christian nationalists actually win the day, America first Christian nationalists win the day, then really it's all you have is you're just bouncing back and forth between two options. You have radical leftism that is woke, it's transgender, it's gay, it's abortive, it's feminist, all those kinds of things, infinity, immigration, all this. And if you ever see any of that going away, but it's not explicitly Christian nationalism, America first, then rest assured, it's not because we're actually putting the woke away. It's not because we've had a change of heart. It's not because we care about traditional family instead of the LGBT mafia. It's not because we care about heritage Americans. It's none of that. It's because we switched gears from radical leftist progressivism. All right, we did that for 4 years. We did that for 8 years. We did that for 30 years, whatever it is. Oh, we need to pause that for a moment. All right, bring out the conservative memes, right? Get the DHS to start tweeting, memes about, Pippin and the Shire. There won't be a Shire unless we go and bomb Muslims for Netanyahu. Bring that out for a moment. So that what? Because we're actually having a change of heart. We're actually becoming more conservative. Nope. So that we can enlist conservative young men, because they're the only ones who actually have testosterone. They're the only ones who can actually bench more than the bar, so that we can enlist them dosed up on copium into the military so that we can put them in war, right? And then as soon as we're done with the war, then the left can win again. In my estimation, the GOP will remain in office if Iran turns into Iraq and we're there for 20 years. If that doesn't happen, if Trump actually does bring troops home and we somehow, declare victory, whatever that means, and the gas prices go back down, then you're getting a Democrat in 2028, because that means that we walked out the old conservative trope and pretended to put the woke away just long enough to get the young Christian Southern white boys in the military to go and fight the war and die. And once we're done with that, then we can go right back to the main schedule, which is more Democrats in office, more leftism, more gay, more feminism, more immigration. That's pretty much it. That's American politics. If you're wondering what is American politics, it is Jewish supremacy, gay Jews on the left, war Jews on the right. Gay Jews on the left, war Jews on the right. Those are your choices. The only alternative is an American first Christian nationalism. It must be an American first, America only Christian nationalism. And if a candidate if he's ashamed or hesitant to say, here are the tests. First, he needs to be able to eat a bacon cheeseburger and drink a glass of milk. If he can't do that, don't vote for him. He needs to be able to eat a bacon cheeseburger and drink a glass of milk on camera right in front of your eyes. Second, he needs to not be shy. He needs to be able to publicly say, and not word it a different way, he needs to explicitly be able to say, I am a Christian nationalist. I make no apology. All right. Next, he needs to be able to say, America first, America only. America first, America only. These are the pillars, right? The 4 pillars. We've talked about this before. He needs to be unapologetically, explicitly, and publicly Christian nationalist. He has to say that. I am a Christian nationalist. Second, he has to be willing to say some form of this: women, go home. It's time to bake pies. Go home. We do not need loudmouth, boss babe, pantsuit women in politics leading men, disparaging men. So women, we love you, but we'll take it from here. All right. So first, Christian nationalism. Second, anti-feminism. He's patriarchal, at least some form of that. Third, he needs to be a race realist. What does that mean? That he hates everybody who's not white? No. What it means, though, is that he is against the noble savage. He is against blank slateism. He is against the idea of fungible widgets, that everybody is the same. He's against egalitarianism, right? He recognizes that men and women are different, and men are called to lead, but also he doesn't just forego egalitarianism in the realm of gender, but also in the realm of race. He's able to say, you know what? We can take refugees from South Africa. We can't take them from India. Why? But that's not fair. It just needs to be a principled position of no immigration at all. No, it actually doesn't. It doesn't have to be a one-size-fits-all, because one size doesn't fit all, because all are not the same. So some element of race realism. Like, he needs to be able to say, we don't have a gun problem in the United States. We have a black crime problem in the United States. He needs to be able to say that. And at the same time say, and I love the black community. I want their best. And one of the ways that we're going to get it is we're going to have to punish criminals, regardless of the color of their sin, strictly, severely, and promptly. No more career criminals. No more liberal judges letting them back on the streets to murder your white daughters on a train. We're not doing that anymore. And we're not going to pretend it's equal. It's not equal. We're going to punish crime, and we're going to do it justly, but it will be disproportionate. And if it's disproportionate, that's black people's fault. And as they're punished, hopefully in God's grace, that will train them, disciple them. Hey, murdering people might not be a good idea, because every time I murder someone, now I actually get consequences. right? So he needs to be a race realist, right? He needs to acknowledge not everybody is the same. He needs to be just and fair across the board, but know that it's going to fall, the results, disproportionately, and that's okay. Because justice is supposed to be blind, not looking for the color of someone's skin to determine what the outcome should be. And then lastly, he also needs to be J-pilled. He needs to be awakened on the issue of not just Israel. This is another thing. He can't just have harsh criticisms for Netanyahu. And he can't just have harsh criticisms for Israeli intelligence. He can't just have harsh criticisms for Mossad and the IDF and the nation state of Israel. He has to hedge and be willing to publicly say, I am concerned about Jewish influence. Because even if the person is not an Israeli citizen at all, and even if they themselves aren't the biggest fans of Bibi Netanyahu, but if they're an American citizen, a Jewish American citizen who is a billionaire, who still wants to orchestrate and facilitate the mass layoff, like Oracle recently did, of 20, 30,000 American workers to replace them with AI, or they want to facilitate tens of thousands of H-1B visas from India, that is still not in America's best interest. And we cannot have disproportional Jewish influence in our politics. So it's not just being willing to criticize the nation state of Israel, but it's also being able to recognize, not universally, not each and every single individual person, but that there is a Jewish problem. It's not all Jews, but it's always Jews. I'm going to say that again. It's not all Jews, but every time it happens, every single time, you might say, there's some Jews involved. And that's somewhat concerning when you think, okay, this is 1% of the U.S. population, but 100% of the time that there's the Pope kissing a cardinal in a Netflix show. All right, well, who are the producers of the show? Who could it possibly be? Well, it's Finkelstein, Goldstein, Stein, like at Berg, like every single time. This is what's going on, whether it's a company adopting AI and mass layoffs of 10, 20, 30,000 American employees, mass immigration, H-1B visas, this, that, or the other, inflation, derogatory, degenerate filth in our TV shows and all this kind of... So it's got to be a guy who's willing to say, hey, I see that. I see that. No, we will not have anti-Semitism laws on the books in America that is a free speech nation. No, we're not going to let these Jewish billionaires in America replace all the white young men in their jobs. No, we're not going to do that. So here are your two choices again. You have war Jews in the GOP and gay Jews in the DNC. And if you want to break out of that mold that we've been in for 50 years, back and forth, then it needs to be Christian nationalists. America first. America first is defined by 4 pillars. Christian nationalists, and they have to say the words. I'm a Christian nationalist. I make no apology. I apologize to absolutely no one. Christian nationalists, patriarchal. They are not feminists. They love women, so they're not misogynist, but they are sexist. They recognize that men and women are not the same and that men have to lead. Third, they are race realist. They're not picking on anybody. They're not being hateful towards anybody, but they're going to apply justice, and they know what time it is. They know what's up. They know that if justice is applied justly across the board, it will have disproportional effects on the black community, and they're willing to do that because it's right. And then lastly, they are J-pilled. They are aware that Israel is not our greatest ally, but beyond just Israel not being our greatest ally, they're willing to say in some form or some fashion out loud that there's also a Jewish problem, not just with the nation state of Israel and Netanyahu, but Jewish billionaires here in the United States, even if they've never even visited Israel. There's still something going on there, and that needs to be hedged, right? That companies, again, it's same as black crime. So what do? You say that Jewish people in the United States can't own businesses. No. It's justice across the board. But you have to prepare for the reality that it will have disproportionate outcomes, and you have to be willing to say, let justice flow down like many waters. So we're going to be just across the board when it comes to violent crime. Well, but now there's a ton of black people in prison. correct. But it's just, and we're going to do that. Okay, we're also going to be just about not replacing American workers. Okay, well, it seems like these new laws that you're putting in place to hold Fortune 500 businesses in check is affecting 50% of Jewish-owned businesses. That seems disproportionate. Why is it affecting Jewish? Because the Jewish businesses, not all of them, not all Jews, but always Jews, they're the ones who are replacing American workers and putting filth into our media and entertainment. It is what it is. So it's not pinpointing anybody because of the color of their skin, because of their race, because of their ethnicity, but it is applying justice knowing that egalitarianism is a lie, and therefore if we apply justice across the board, it will have disproportionate outcomes, and we're okay with that. We're okay with that. That guy gets your vote. Anybody else, I'm just saying, anybody else, I think you should refrain. That would be my counsel at this point. My counsel is we're not playing the game anymore. We're not, well, let's vote for the war Jew so that we don't get the gay Jew. No. Let's vote for America First, Christian nationalist, race realist, patriarchal, and J-pilled. Let's vote for those guys and those guys only, because if that's what we do, then guess what? They'll run those candidates. If they know we ran our based, barefoot Indian Vivek Ramaswamy and nobody voted for him. Good. So now you know to do better next time. Hope you learned your lesson. That's where we are.
Yeah, I'm realizing as you were talking, I'm like, this is turning into like NXR best hits as we go through these articles, hitting the different pillars. So let's jump to the next one. Actually, this touches on feminism. This was published in the Los Angeles Times yesterday morning, and it's actually terrible analysis. So bear with it. I'm going to read the portion here. But basically, the author Anita Chabri is alleging that Joel's influence and people like Joel, it's actually influencing the Trump administration in terms of decisions they make about, Trump firing Pam Bondi or Christine Ohm. But I'll jump right in here. So it says, remember when our president attacked a female journalist for asking uncomfortable questions with the casual, sincere, quiet piggy? That was 5 months ago, a lifetime in the chaos of the Trump administration. But it was a telling moment about how not just our president, but those crafting his policy view women and their place in society. Hint, it's not at the top. While I have not a bit of pity or dismay about Pam Bondi or Kristi Noem, the former U.S. Attorney General and the former Secretary of Homeland Security, respectively, we were given that they were given the axe by President Trump in recent days. It shouldn't be lost that this is just another quote-unquote quiet piggy week in an administration that is increasingly openly hostile to women in power. I see a theme, Texas Representative Jasmine Crockett wrote on social media. He will throw the incompetent women under the bus a lot faster than the incompetent men. When democracies decay, and especially when movements like Christian nationalism rise, an erosion of women's equality almost always comes first. Bondi and Noam are part of a U.S. erosion that should alarm us all, whatever your gender identity. First, the obvious. Good riddance. Noam seemed to relish cruelty and treated her job like a costume party, constantly mugging for cameras with guns and faux toughness as if the dismantling of lives and imprisoning even children was a game. Never mind the grift. Bondi, meanwhile, always seemed like the football team's third favorite cheerleader, desperately vying for the attention of the jock gods around her, even if it meant groveling for approval, even if it meant selling out all women with her ultimate censoring of the Epstein files. But while Bondi and Noam were obviously incompetent, incompetence has never been a fireable offense for Trump. Just ask Pete Hegseth, whose Thor fantasies are currently playing out in an all-to-real war, or Robert F. Kennedy, who has dismantled American science while glorifying beef tallow and workouts and jeans. Don't even get me started on Kash Patel. It's no accident. This is where it gets good. It's no accident that women at the top of Trump's administration are being purged. They were all useful in the first days of the regime, while power was still being consolidated and shimmers of diversity were helpful. But as the sexist and racist nature of the MAGA machine has gained mainstream acquiescence, if not acceptance, the need to keep up the appearance of diversity is less and less. Take, for example...
Stop there for just a moment.
Yep.
This is So that, I mean, this is written by a leftist, okay? So a little bit of horseshoe theory going on here, right? They're right about some things, and then, of course, they're also wrong. They're landing on right conclusions, but they're getting there the wrong way, right?
Yep.
So they're landing on some right conclusions, but they're getting there the wrong way. But that last paragraph that Antonio just read is key. Right, I'm going to read it one more time. It's no accident that women at the top of Trump's administration are being purged. They were useful in the first days of the regime, right? Trump's, his new administration, especially on the campaign trail, as he's making all of his picks, while power was still being consolidated and shimmers, right, the veneer of diversity was still helpful. But as the sexist and racist nature of MAGA is not sexist or racist, and it's a shame. That said, they think as the sexist and racist nature of the MAGA machine has gained mainstream acquiescence, if not acceptance, the need to keep up the appearance of diversity, having women in your administration, those kinds of things, is less and less. That they are absolutely right about. It is true that, and this is what I want you to take away from this, it is true that Trump, in his second administration, all these kinds of hires, whether it's a Kash Patel, who doesn't even swear on the Bible, right?
Bhagavad
Gita, right? I'll see you in Valhalla. Get that crap out of my country. What do you mean Valhalla? No, heaven. Charlie Kirk is not in Valhalla. Charlie Kirk is in heaven because he's a Christian man. We don't do Valhalla here.
You only go to
back.
Valhalla, too, if you die in battle. So not only is he giving pagan nonsense, he's also wrong. Like, how are you wrong on both sides of it? You look retarded.
Can't even pagan right. So, yeah, so Kash Patel, right? A guy who's going to swear on, on the Bhagavad Gita instead of the Bible and these tropes about Charlie Kirk and Valhalla. Pam Bondi, because she's, a woman. You've got Susie Wiles, all these individuals. And it is the diversity Trojan horse. And what we're saying is they're saying that's a problem because they don't actually mean it. They're not actually diverse. What we're saying is that's a problem because they're still playing to a leftist framework. Mm-hmm. The true strong man, right? The true Caesar who will come, when he comes, he won't play to leftist tropes. He won't. He won't give the pretense of diversity. Why? Because he'll really be diverse. He'll mean it. No, because he'll mock diversity. He'll mock it. He'll say, no, we're not going to pretend to be diverse because we're not going. What fellowship does light have with darkness? What fellowship does evil have with good? What fellowship does Christ have with Beelzebub? Diversity is an egalitarian scheme. The first sin of Satan was the sin of egalitarianism, lying to the woman, saying, if you eat of the fruit of the knowledge of the tree of good and evil, you can be as God. You can be equal to God. We don't need egalitarianism. We don't need communism. We don't need liberalism. What we need is Christianity. What we need is Christ. And Christ built a world, and the world that he made with natural distinctions is a world that is not egalitarian, but is a world that has baked into its fabric hierarchy. Now, what makes it Christian instead of Muslim is that within Christian hierarchy, it doesn't reject natural hierarchies, but those at the top do have a certain duty and obligation and compassion towards those who are lower down. So what makes Christianity Christian is not that men and women are equal. What makes it Christian is that husbands who are not equal with their wives, but are superiors. That is the language. And it's like, he said superior. I can't believe he used that word. That is the language that William Gouge, one of the reformers, uses. And this isn't 1,000 years ago. This is just a few hundred years ago. This is how Christians in the West, in America, used to speak. They would say the husband is the head of the home and he is the superior to his wife. She is a helpmeet and she is inferior. That said, what does the husband do with his superiority? He leads with authority and also loves her with self-sacrificial love, willing to lay down his life for her, providing for her, protecting her. Right? So hierarchy, the absence of hierarchy, the undoing of hierarchy is not the essence of Christianity. Christianity it accepts and acknowledges and works with the grain, not against it, within the natural order, which is not egalitarian. So it acknowledges hierarchy. It acknowledges natural distinctions. It acknowledges disparities, but it does so with duty, with obligation, and compassion. That's what makes it Christian. And the great man, whenever he comes, whoever he might be, he's not going to be doing what Trump did. Trump was tipping the hat to the left. He's tipping the hat to the left. And that's what guys like Nick Fuentes were picking up on in 2024 when he's saying, hey, this isn't the same Trump. Be careful, because if you give this guy your vote, something changed from 2015, 2016 to 2024. And one of those changes is he is bought out by Jewish donors, by Miriam Adelson, $200 million donation. Trump is in bed with certain constituents and certain foreign agendas. He is going to be walking the line. He's going to be towing the line. He's going to be tipping the hat to liberal framework, to leftist ideologies. He's not the same guy. And so this article gets it right when it says, oh, it's not an accident that Trump's administration, they're willing to purge the women now that they don't need them anymore. They don't have to keep up the pretense of diversity. And they're saying it as though that's a problem because they should really be diverse, not just pretending to be diverse, but actually diverse. I'm saying it's a problem because we shouldn't even pretend that diversity is our strength. Diversity is a liability. It's been a liability in America for decades now. We all know it. Diversity lowers a high trust society to where everyone is skeptical of one another. It increases crime. It increases inflation because of all the tax welfare state policies where you have to fund a certain sector of your population. Diversity is not a strength. And because it's not a strength, it's not a virtue, it shouldn't even be pretended. It should be outright, publicly, unapologetically rejected. And we're going to finish this article because they list me in the very next line. But you're going to have to wait for just a moment for a quick word from our sponsors. One of the best sponsors on our show is Paleovalley. They have some of the healthiest food and products and supplements you can possibly imagine. And I've been testing and trying their products, not just me, but my wife and my children, our family. Their bone broth protein is phenomenal. Their beef sticks, multiple flavors, teriyaki, summer garlic sausage, are incredible. My kids, I have 5 of them, not 5 beef sticks. I have 5 kids, which means we need like 100 beef sticks, but my children love them. They have supplements, good supplements, not trash, good supplements for both men and women. So you want to help keep NXR Studios in the game? You need to help us by patroning our sponsor. It's Paleovalley, an incredible source for healthy food, but you can't just check out their website. Don't just type it into Google. If you use our link, which is in the description for this show, the show notes below, click on that link because it'll take you to a special Paleovalley website, a curated page with all the products that me and the NXR team and our families have personally tried and that are our favorite products that we vouch for. And there's a 15% discount that's already baked in to that webpage. But you got to use our link in the show notes below. Warning, this product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical. All right, I'm going to keep this simple. Look, I know that you know that I know that you know you're using nicotine. Half of the people listening to this show, you're using some kind of nicotine product. I know this. I'm in group chats with you. You have told me to my face. I know you're using it. So I'm not asking you to start a new habit. I'm not asking you to add something to your budget. I'm not asking you to spend money that you're not already spending. I'm simply asking for you to transition to a based Christian America First company. Right there on the cover, you have a foot crushing the head of the serpent. It's not subtle. These guys are based, they're Christian, they're America First. They make their product in America. Go to knickknack.com. Use their product and you will be supporting NXR Studios. You'll be supporting a Christian company. You will be saving 20% on your nicotine purchases. Use my promo code. It's all caps, JOEL. That's Joel 20 exclamation point. Joel 20 exclamation point. Save 20%. Go to knickknack.com.
All right, let's keep reading this article. Just a few more paragraphs here to finish up. So the next line starts with, take, for example, the far-right attacks on Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett after her pointed and skeptical questions recently on Trump's attempt to end birthright citizenship. Quote, a woman as a mother is a precious gift, but a woman as a civil magistrate is the death of a nation, wrote far-right pastor and increasingly popular anti-equality influencer Joel Webbin on social media.
Wait, real quick. All right, there's a lot of lines. People will be like, far right, fascist, extreme Christian nationalist Pastor Joel. This might be my favorite.
I think she made it up.
Anti-equality.
I've never heard
pastor.
that before.
I
thought you were going to say increasingly popular. Think about the LA Times. They were like, guys, he's on the rise. He's ascendant.
Well, this is
He's
what I
increasingly
appreciate
popular.
about New York Times, LA Times, The New Yorker, Daily Mail. They're a lot more honest than evangelical Christians. Because our Christian opponents will actually, they will just straight up, deceptively say, Joel's the worst person in the world, heretical, going to hell, son of the devil. Also, in the same sentence, not popular at all. Nobody listens to him. He's a joke. It's like, which one is it? Am I very dangerous or am I a joke? If I'm a joke, why do you keep highlighting me? At least like all these liberal leftist organizations, right? At least they're willing to say he's anti-equality and increasingly popular.
Don't forget that part.
All right, go ahead.
Last one here. This is the same Texas gentleman, she called you a gentleman, who went viral recently for proclaiming, women, shut up. Of course, it is literally an offense to God for women to have
To be fair,
influence.
I'm in that clip as well saying the same thing.
You were.
But
You were.
so it's our whole team.
And
Yep.
finishes it with, it is literally an offense to God for women to have influence in the governing of society. I think she meant that as a sarcasm, but so true.
Yeah,
So
it's
true.
absolutely true. And just for the receipts real quick, and right now we're talking about the best receipts, the infallible receipts, biblical receipts. That's not that people think like, oh, he's so extreme and he's shooting from the hip and saying whatever pops into his head, it comes out of his mouth. No, guys, I'm a local pastor. I've spent the last 10 years preaching verse by verse through books of the Bible. I've read the Bible, believe it or not, once or twice. I've read it dozens and dozens of times. That's from the Word of God. Isaiah chapter 3 says that one of the signs of God's judgment upon a nation, when a nation is cursed for its idolatry and rebellion against God, one of the judgments is that they would be ruled over by foreigners, children, and women. So when I say in that line, what was it again? They're quoting me. I say, women, shut up. I'm not talking, and I literally say in the clip, you can watch the clip because Right Wing Watch, they're the ones who posted it and made it go viral. I literally say, women, shut up, and then boom, immediately give a disclaimer, parenthetical statement. I'm not talking about a daughter going to approach her dad, and her dad says, shut up, 5-year-old woman. No, we're not talking about that. I'm talking about women who are seeking to lead in the public square, especially in a governing capacity over men, in a civil, formal capacity. Those women need to shut up. And then immediately, here's the quote, of course, that's true. It is literally an offense to God for women, they put this in quotation marks, for women to have influence in the governing of society. Not only is it an offense to God, but if we're actually using the biblical receipts from Isaiah chapter 3, it's something that God does in his sovereignty. He actually elevates and installs women in governing positions of society as a judgment and punishment for it, because Lord knows it's a punishment. Right? If you think women leading in the civil capacity isn't a punishment, there are dead daughters because female liberal judges let out career criminals after being arrested 14 times so that they could go and stab your daughter in the neck on a train. Right? Women in positions, formal positions of civil governing authority, are God's judgment on a nation, his punishment on a nation. Because if you think, what could hurt a nation? God's rod of discipline, punishment for a nation steeped in idolatry, a nation that's rebelling against him. God looks at a nation like that and says, they're disobedient, they must be disciplined, and it has to hurt so they might come to their senses and repent. And when God thinks, I need discipline that will hurt this nation currently in rebellion, he thinks, I know what will hurt women in leadership. Nothing hurts more than women in formal leadership, because they will do exactly the opposite of everything that leads to prosperity and life and blessing. And the nation will be crushed under their incompetent, deceptive, and foolish leadership. And eventually they will cry out and say, God, save us from this gynocracy. Save us from this woman-ruled world. We earned it by our rebellion and our idolatry. We earned your rod. And the rod has written on it, women in leadership. We earned it. We deserved it. We repent in dust and ashes. We cannot take another day of women leading our government. Please have mercy. Please have mercy. That's Isaiah chapter 3. That's not just the mouth of Joel Webbin, the random thoughts in the middle of the night of Joel Webbin. That is the Bible. So when they're quoting me with quotation marks, using sarcasm and saying, look at how ridiculous he is, what they're saying is, look at how ridiculous Joel is. No, look at how ridiculous Isaiah is. A prophet of God who spoke God's word infallibly. They are saying, look at how ridiculous the Christian faith is. Traditional Christianity that built the West. We hate it. We despise it. It's ridiculous. But that's where it's coming from. When they quote me, very often they're quoting the scripture.
I remember last week feeling a profound sense of frustration at this decision over birthright citizenship, that someone could fly in, bottom of the ninth, anchor their baby there, and they're just given all the rights of citizenship that my ancestors fought for to mean something. And you're not exaggerating when you say it's women. On the side of striking down Trump's executive order, allowing birthright citizenship to continue, you have Puerto Rican Supreme Court Justice Sotomayor, Black Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, Jewish Supreme Court Justice Elena Kagan, all women, probably going to be joined by honorary woman Justice Roberts, and the last woman on the court, Amy Coney Barrett. Those five, one man, but four women, will again hollow out the American identity, hollow out American citizenship, sell us out to the world. It is ruled by women, and it is destructive. And it is a judgment on us that we have to sit there, and there's nothing practically short-term that we can do about it. We promised you Dale Partridge. We promised you Calvin Robinson on the thumbnail. We're going to get to them really quickly. Dale Partridge had the honor of a whole New York Times article being written about him and his church, and it's titled, I'm not going to read all of it, it's titled, "The Women Who Believe That Women Should Lose the Right to Vote." The new Christian right is leading the charge, leading the conversation. Calvin Robinson was quoted in the Daily Mail talking about Erica Kirk and Caroline Leavitt. Caroline Leavitt is the press secretary for the Trump admin. They're saying you can have it both. Be a mom and be a working mom. Be a mom that works 50 hours a week and be present in the home, which, spoiler alert, is not possible. Calvin's quoted in the Daily Mail as saying, hang on, this is just feminism. It has an American flag draped over it, right? It's blonde. It looks great on stage. This is just feminism. So whether it's with the women's right to vote, whether it's, as you, Joel, are saying, women in leadership, whether it's women saying they can have a career at home, we are leading the conversation and people are listening.
Well said.
Amen. All right. Thank you guys so much. Subscribe on YouTube, NXR Studios, and on Rumble. Make sure to follow me. We post all these videos straight from my X account at Joel Webbin. Follow me on X at Joel Webbin. Thanks for tuning in. It is Monday. We will see you, Lord willing, on Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time.